Angela Rayner is one of Westminster's few natural performers in the chamber at the moment. She lands a line, she feels like a human being, and she has the most valuable asset in modern politics, recognisability. Yet recognisability cuts both ways. It turns a paperwork story into a morality tale, so the question is simple. Has her Hove flat and stamp duty row merely signed her up for attention, or has it set fire to her leadership prospect? Is she a capable performer anymore? First, the facts as they are established in public reporting. In May, Rayner bought a flat in Hove for about £800,000. It seems to have gone up in reporting. Every time I read a newspaper, it's gone up from 600,000 to 700,000 to 800,000. Articles allege she reduced her stamp duty bill by 40,000 by ensuring that at the point of purchase she didn't own another property, having removed her name from the Ashton under lie house deeds during divorce proceedings. Her team says she paid exactly what was due in line with the rules. Tax experts quoted in several outlets say the arrangement appears lawful, and the Conservatives have asked the independent ethics advisor Sir Lorry Magnus to investigate whether there is a ministerial code issue around transparency. They are also backing an attempt to challenge her electoral registration in Ashton. Second, context matters. This controversy lands while Labour is pushing tougher property tax measures on others, notably allowing councils in England from April 2025 to levy 100% council tax premium on second homes. That is the political powder keg, ministers setting rules that bite the public while being accused of gaming their own exposure. And even if her position is lawful, the hypocrisy charge practically writes itself. Of course, against all that, you should have sympathy for somebody going through a divorce, shouldn't you? Third, legality. It's not the same as legitimacy. The FT and others note that while what she did appears to comply with HMRC rules, the Times and the Telegraph focus on optics and on whether her declarations were sufficiently open, plus the question of where she is genuinely resident for electoral and council tax purposes. And those who want her damaged talk about one rule for them and 3 homes, 3 pads. Those who want this to blow over point out that ministers of all stripes arrange their affairs within the rules. Both are true. Politics is what sits on top of those truths. Fourth, do voters care? Evidence so far suggests limited cut-through beyond Westminster. Internal polling of Labour members this summer still had her near the top of cabinet popularity tables, and public ratings consistently show her among the better-known Labour figures. This is not a storm that has obviously redefined her with the public. It has, however, added a loud footnote. Great communicator, but is she fully straight with the details? And fifth, the hypocrisy trap. It's not the tax calculation that hurts, it's the juxtaposition. The Housing Secretary hammered second homes while benefiting from precisely those definitions of main residence and second residence, and in the Grace and Favour Admiralty house flat on which conventionality, the state pays council tax, and you have a tabloid-ready tableau, however standard the practice. The tableau is what gives the story legs. Sixth, the ethics angle. The Conservatives have written to Sir Lorry Magnus calling for an inquiry, and they've also moved to challenge her place on the Thameside electoral roll. If an inquiry is opened and finds she's complied with the law and the code, this becomes narrative wallpaper. If an inquiry finds she fell short on transparency, it will not end her career, but it will degrade her authority to front reforms that ask others to pay more. Leaders survive law. They struggle with trust. Seventh, Westminster versus real life. When the Times went to Hove, they found as many people charmed by the sight of Rayner in a dry robe with rosé as they did critics. That is not just colour. It illustrates her superpower. She feels normal. The risk is that normal collides with numbers, and 3 addresses is not normal for most people. If the story settles on the idea that she is now part of the set that lectures and exempts herself, relatability curdles into resentment. Eighth, the strategy she needs. There are 3 steps. First, a dated timeline, a full dated timeline, deeds, changes, occupancy, council tax status, electoral registrations, stamp duty calculations, advice taken, put it all in one document. The Commons Library note on second home premiums shows how quickly technicalities become political. Get ahead of the technicalities. 2. One rule message. Announced that the same clarity she applies to herself is the standard she will require of every minister and senior official. That neutralizes the charge that she is hiding while others pay. 3. Policy emphasis needs to be on building, not punishing. Shift the public conversation back to spades in the ground and planning decisions. Her department is already signalling tougher interventions where councils block homes. Tie her personal story to delivery. Homes built, bottlenecks cleared, planning appeals sped up. Voters forgive personal mess if they see public competence. At the moment, they don't see any public confidence. Finally, 9th. Actually, not finally. I've got another point as well. Scenarios for the future. No formal ethics probe or a quick review that finds compliance. She publishes a clear timeline and a signal Q&A, and the story peters out. In that world, her leadership prospects are unchanged. If anything, surviving another round of hostile coverage hardens her reputation as Labour's street fighter in a cabinet of technocrats. If an inquiry opens and reports that while lawful, some declarations or explanations were too slow or too coy, she may be manageably bruised. She takes a mild rap, she apologizes for opacity, and she recommits to standards that trims her halo but not her future. Finally, there's the electoral roll challenge or land registration ambiguity thing that could drag on, feeding rolling headlines about where she really lives. It's the slow bleed. Even if this harms her chiefly as Labour's housing policy becomes a story of punitive taxes without visible benefits, the process stories rarely decide careers on their own. Process stories plus unpopular bills sometimes do, but it's more likely to be the slow drip, drip, drip of jeers at PMQs. Finally, 10th, the verdict. Has she scuppered any chance of becoming Prime Minister one day? The answer is no. Not on these facts. The legal position looks defensible. The political position is salvageable. The danger is reputational drift. The gap between her brand as the plain-speaking everywoman and the perception that she is playing three-dimensional council tax chess. Close that gap by over-disclosing, then change the subject to building houses. If she does that, this row becomes one more scar that proves she can take a hit. If she does not, she becomes the shorthand her opponents will use every time she says the word fairness. And voters tolerate success. If the government's housing programme delivers, Rayner's private choices fade into the noise. If delivery stalls while the tax net tightens, the hypocrisy charge will bite. The story's end will not be written in Hove or Ashton, but in planning decisions and competitions.